All right, just updating you guys on this 2005 Honda Recon 250. This is the one that the crank sensor went out on. That's what I would call it, but they call it a lot of different things. They call it a crank sensor or a pickup coil or a few different things, an igniter coil. It's basically a crank sensor. It's a Hall effect switch. But long story short, in my last video, I showed you guys I removed this rear cover without pulling the engine off. So I wanted to just show you guys I was able to get it all back together without pulling the engine as well. It was pretty tricky because you have the shift lever that has to line up inside there. You have the starter gears on the other side that have to line up. And then you have the gear position switch that has to line up. So you've got quite a few different things going on at the same time. What I did is I never touched the gear position switch. So I made sure that was lined up when it came apart, and I never moved it. So when I went in, I looked in there to make sure this side, the engine side, was still in the same place it was, and it was. And I looked at the sensor, it still appeared to be lined up. So then the rest of it, I just took my time aligning it as it went. The shifter lever has a little straight rod that goes in there. And basically when I looked in, it just needed to be straight. So I just put it in there straight. The gears, I was able to look through the top as it was coming together. So basically, as I got it close, I just kept working it slowly in until I got it all the way up in there in position. So it actually worked out. It only took me 5-10 minutes at the most to get the cover back installed. Then obviously I had to put all the bolts in and tighten everything up. And then I did put a little bit of sealer at the rubber connections to the gaskets. There's 2 spots. So I just used a little bit of right stuff there. When I took it apart, you could tell there was some there as well. But everything went together really well. It was, like I said, definitely tedious to get that cover back in there to make sure everything's lined up. But it's completely doable. And I'm really glad I didn't pull the engine. I'm positive that saved me some time. The other thing I did as well, so what I did is I just put the bolts back in the cover, I put my ground wires back on, and then what I did is I reconnected all my electrical connections, left the starter off still, hooked up my negative battery cable, turned the ignition on, and then I cycled through all the gears. So I shifted it first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and then back down to neutral, just making sure all that was working correctly before I continued. I disconnected the battery, disconnected the grounds, continued to put all my bolts back in, and tightened everything up and reinstalled everything from that standpoint. So that was another tip that I thought was important, is I would put the cover on, just put a couple bolts in it, and then check your functions of all your transmission stuff before completing the install, because I was just questioning it enough that I really wanted to check that. And sure enough, everything was good. I just had this running for about 20 minutes. I did a few things to the carburetor, so I just wanted to see how that was going to go. And yeah, everything's working great. I'm going to run it again tomorrow where I can actually ride it, get some heat in it, and make sure everything's good as far as carburetor adjustments. But other than that, this thing's all set. It just kind of got dark on me tonight, so I didn't want to ride it around in the middle of the night, at least too much. I already did a little bit. But the other thing I did do is there is actually an air idle mixture screw, but the factory, they don't let you adjust it. So when you take the carburetor off, it is right straight up here in about the center of the bowl on the front side. So when you take the carburetor off, you flip it upside down, you'll see it, but it looks like it's plugged. It just looks kind of like a half moon. I was able to take a screwdriver and turn that enough to turn it completely out. Sure enough, it's an air idle mixture screw. And what I did is I cut a straight slit in it for a regular screwdriver will work on it. And what I did is just used a screwdriver bit for like a DeWalt or Milwaukee drill set, any of the 1/4-inch screwdriver bits. And I'm able to just put that in my hand and adjust the air mixture from that screw now. So that was one of the things I did. But yeah, I'm happy it did work out. Like I said, if you need to remove the stator cover, change the igniter, the crank sensor, you can absolutely do that with the engine in here. Just takes a little bit of patience, but it's definitely doable. Hopefully this helps you guys. If you have any questions, just comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and keep it saucy.